Look, I want to just play. There's two parts. We're just going to play the first part from YouTube of CNN and former Microsoft head talk of geoengineering the planet, part 1 of 2. And Fareed Zakaria talks with the former chief technology officer of Microsoft. And they talk about how easy it is to put up these giant blimps up into the upper atmosphere, putting out sulfur dioxide to negate the effects of carbon dioxide. Now, out in the open, they're talking about geoengineering, terraforming. The issue is they're already using this. They've already got weather modification blimps up. In fact, I printed it last night and meant to give it to you this morning when I was here at like 10. The headline was, to find one of the articles, was UFO over Salt Lake. And it's a giant blimp. These blimps are on record flying around spraying the atmosphere and surveilling people. I have the Washington Post, New York Times 6-7 years ago when they announced they were putting these blimps up for multiple reasons. But then the local news, they call the Air Force and say, what is this? They go, we don't know. So the locals go, it's a flying saucer. There it is. UAV, satellites, blimps, Homeland Security. That's from Homeland Security Newswire. Raytheon blimp, ideal for surveillance, cruise missions, detection. So you guys found a bunch of them. They announce in 1992, a scientist won a Nobel Prize, or was it 93? We've covered this, and I'm doing research the last few years on chemtrails for a film I'm making. And they admit that they have adding to jet fuel so that the air traffic controllers don't know, the pilots don't know. There's only 3 or 4 big manufacturers of the jet fuel for your mainline airports. It's added. It's designed to disperse nuclei for cloud formation, ammonium, sulfur dioxide, barium salts, aluminum dioxide, and it disperses it into the atmosphere. And so by 95, they launched tests. And suddenly people went, I never saw a condensation trail last more than a minute or two. That thing's been up there for 5 hours. It's turning into a cloud bank. Well, what's going on? And then the White House science czar comes out in his first speech to an AP meeting. There it is. Eyes in the sky for Homeland Security. The exact photo I told you about. That's from 2005. Homeland Security blimps. And look at it over the Washington Monument. Blow that up for folks, please. Clips from ABC News and others where they're going, is it flying saucers? You know, is it aliens? And they got these things over Moscow. Now, when you watch the CNN piece, they show giant V-shaped blimps. And those are the really big ones that go up to 100,000 feet or higher and just hover around in circles. And it's so high up, you got to have a telescope to look at them. I mean, literally, if I had the time, they've got one over Dallas. It looks at all of Texas. I could drive up there on a clear day, scan around with it with a filter, because it's white. You got to see it behind the background with like a brown filter. I took astronomy in school and own a couple telescopes. The point is, and I could look around and find them. And I could put it on the news and people would think it was a giant alien craft. No. But notice, it's the same thing they just saw over Moscow was one of the blimps taking off. And, of course, the Russians have them. But the really high-tech ones are V-shaped, giant. And CNN shows these in the piece coming up. But first, that's one of the more primitive design ones of Homeland Security right there on screen. I sent you a bunch of clips. Just show one of the local news clips of Salt Lake City.
What's hovering over Salt Lake City? Is it a rocket, a blimp, a UFO? A strange object seen in the skies has residents scratching their heads. The craft floated overhead for several minutes before disappearing. Salt Lake air traffic controllers said their radar didn't pick up anything, and they have no knowledge of the craft.
Yeah, see, that's the issue. I mean, you look, it's a blimp with tail fins, looks like the Hindenburg. It's got propellers on it. I mean, this would be like if the Red Baron landed a red biplane in front of your house, and the news came and showed it and said, we don't know what this craft is. It'd be like if a 777 landed at George W. Bush or H.W. Bush Airport in Houston, and everyone ran on the tarmac saying, we don't know what this is. See, they treat you like you're morons. And there's like a 9-minute ABC newscast where they marvel and the government won't say what it is and maybe it's a UFO and the government said they didn't see anything. They treat you like children and just tell you it doesn't exist and you're seeing things when giant blimps are flying around. Now, I looked into this story from a few years ago and I looked into the Dallas stories and clearly they have military bases there. They are launching blimps. And they're only seen when they launch, because when they go up to 100 to 120,000 feet, they are tiny. And people with telescopes, there's literally hundreds of videos online, where people with telescopes run around freaking out thinking they've found UFOs. And people with powerful telescopes, privately owned, keep seeing giant craft orbiting the Earth. And you look at the photos of them, it's giant space stations. 90+% of the space program in the U.S. and Russia has always been military. They've got space planes. I mean, you really think Virgin Galactic of Virgin Atlantic is the only group that has space planes? A private airline company has a couple spaceships, and they launch missions into space for tourists, but the government doesn't have a space plane, and NASA can't get one off the ground. Give me a break. Werner von Braun in the 20s and 30s drew up the space shuttle in Germany when he was the head of the German and then Hitlerian program in the 30s. He was the head of NASA's program. That is an ancient tinker toy that you are shown. The reason they go with blimps is because they're so inexpensive. It's much cheaper to have surveillance blisters, infrared scanners, and face scanners and license plate readers and weather modification packages on blimps than it is to launch them with payloads, because the space planes are not good at bringing large payloads up from the intel I have, though they have some larger space planes now that are highly classified that have leaked. Still, they use booster rockets to get them into the atmosphere. But a blimp, you put it up there in the edge of the atmosphere, it's up above. It can video and scan multiple states. That's what's going on record. On record. Now, when we come back, they talk about chemtrail blimps. Chemtrail blimps with the former chief technology officer of Microsoft about geoengineering from CNN. We're just going to come back, go right into this clip, then we'll go out to break. I'll come back on the other side of the bottom of the hour and comment on this. The full video is linked at Infowars.com.
But I just can't see the world coming together to reduce CO2 emissions to the levels that will actually stop it. I can't see China or India doing it, which in and of itself would doom the project. And I really can't see Western countries making the kinds of drastic changes that would be required to cut CO2 emissions. And if we did, there is still lots of CO2 up in the atmosphere right now, and it will cause global warming anyway. All of which made me want to know, are there other approaches? Are there other strategies we might pursue? In that spirit, and in the wake of the Copenhagen summit, here is a fascinating conversation, a fascinating set of ideas, concrete ideas to solve the problem of global warming and energy without going down the Copenhagen-Kyoto route, or in addition to going down the Copenhagen-Kyoto route. Nathan Myhrvold, you've been looking into the issue of global warming, and you've brought all your expertise. I mean, you're a trained physicist. You spent years as the chief technology officer at Microsoft. So you understand the science, the economics. What is it that you think when you look at what is going on, what was going on in Copenhagen?
Here's the real problem, or one of the many aspects of the problem. When you emit CO2, a good fraction of it, at least 20%, maybe even a little more, will stay for thousands of years. So it's not like it goes up and then it can go away after a little bit. As we continue to emit CO2, it continues to make the problem worse. And then even if we stopped cold turkey, it'll be there for a long period of time. If you wanted a problem that was almost perfectly designed to be difficult for us to grapple with, this would be it. Because the cost is very high. The solution is going to require a lot of sacrifice. But the benefit is diffuse and global and way out in the future. And that's the kind of problem humans are bad at.
And that's why you have a fundamental problem with the idea, the whole approach of limiting carbon emissions as the solution to global warming.
I think that you have to be an incredible optimist, or you have to believe that it's not a severe problem to think that that's the only solution we should investigate right now. Okay, this building has fire extinguishers and a fire system, but it's probably unlikely there'll be a fire today. It's a low probability event, but it's important enough that we really have to have all of this infrastructure and alarms and firemen that will race up here and so forth. Because although it's...
Okay, we're going to come back and play the rest of it, but I want to just counter what you just heard.